Hello, welcome to this lecture video. So our purpose today is to process our data. So using a questionnaire, so let me just show you the questionnaire. So this is the content of the questionnaire. So it is a psychological well-being, particularly in the area of environmental mastery. So this questionnaire is downloaded from the internet. It is just part of the whole psychological well-being questionnaire. So it talks about, so we just select environmental mastery. So the respondents were asked the following, or rather to rate the following. So it's a Likert scale. So to give their stand whether they strongly disagree, somewhat disagree, slightly disagree, slightly agree, somewhat agree, and strongly agree. So given the following statements, like in general, I feel I am in charge of the situation in which I live. Number two, the demands of everyday life often get me down. So as you can see here, in comparison with item 1 and item 2, so item 1 is a positive item because it means that if I strongly agree with the statement that in general, I feel I am in charge of the situation in which I live, so it is actually talking about a very high or a very good psychological well-being. While if for item number 2, it is the demands of everyday life often get me down. So it's a negative statement. If I stated that I strongly agree, it means that it's not a good psychological, or I have a very low psychological well-being. So in this statement, so it consists of 14 statements. So for this 14 statements, the one in yellow colors or highlighted in yellow are the negative statements, or the ones not highlighted in yellow are in positive statement. Now, one problem that we might encounter here is how will we process later the data, because we are claiming that using this questionnaire, you will be able to know the psychological well-being of the respondent. So I cannot just, of course, add all the ratings, or rather get the average of the ratings, because it will come up with a wrong value, because of course some are negative statements and some are positive statements. So actually we have two ways to process this data. So number one is we can separate negative items and positive items and process the negative items first before the positive items, or vice versa. And then that's the time, of course, that you're going to reveal what is the psychological well-being in terms of the environmental mastery. Or another option is we could actually reverse the ratings given by the respondents in negative items in a way that, of course, if we are going to get the average, then it will lead you to a correct psychological well-being. Now, let's do option number 2. We are going to reverse the ratings and the negative items. When we say that we are going to reverse, it means that the rating for 1 will be changed to, what's the higher rating? 6. So 1 will be changed to 6. 2 will be replaced with 5. 3 will be replaced with 4. 4 will be replaced with 3. 5 will be replaced with 2, and 6 will be replaced with 1. So that is how to reverse the scores. And then after reversing the scores, now for us to determine what is the average, or rather what is the psychological well-being of the students, we are going to use this guide for interpretation. So this means that if we computed for a value of within the range of 1 to 1.49, it means that the psychological well-being of the respondent is 1, very low, while if the psychological well-being is 5, within 5.5 to 6, it means that it is very high. So let us show that using Microsoft Excel. So just to have a clear picture of what we are talking about. So for instance, so let us show this by considering now an example rating. So if I will rate this, so for example, in general, so in encoding the data, so I'll place here item 1, item 2, or we are talking about respondent 1. So this is respondent 1. So let us move this so that we can place respondent number. So number 1. So item 1, item 2, until to the last item. So we could just drag this into item number 14. Okay, so let's do it side by side. So here, like, let's say, in general, I feel I am in charge of the situation in which I live. So I somewhat agree with this item. So I'll encode 5 because, of course, somewhat agree is 5. And then the demands of everyday life often gets me down. So for instance, my response is somewhat disagree. So let's place this as number 2. Number 3, I do not fit very well with the people and community around me. That is somewhat disagree again. So I'll place number 2. Number 4, I am quite good at managing the many responsibilities of my daily life. So let me rate that as 5, somewhat agree. I often feel overwhelmed by my responsibilities. That is slightly agree. I'll place 4. Number 6, if I were unhappy with my life, living situation, I would take every step to change, to change it. So let me respond to that. So for instance, so it is somewhat disagree. So by, for example, going over all the items and rating this. So for instance, these are my ratings. So let me reach until number 14. So how will I determine what is the psychological well-being of this respondent if these are the responses of the respondent? So as mentioned, we can do that by computing for the average, but the problem is that if we're going to compute for the average, it will be affected by the negative items. So we cannot just compute for the average. Then what can we do? So we can, of course, reverse our data. So if you will do that manually, it will take you a lot of time. Let's say, for instance, item 1 and item 2. Item 2 and 3, this is negative item. So item 5 is also a negative item. Item 6, 7. So item 8 is negative item. So let me just highlight it with red or change the font into red. And then 11 and 13 are also negative items. So which means to correctly analyze this data, I have to reverse this score. So if you will do it manually, so it will of course take you time. Like for example, 2 corresponds to, in our rating, it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 6, this is 5. Because what we are doing is, so let me just show it here. So if we are reversing it, so 1 will become 6, 2 will become 5. So this will be changed into 5, 5, and then 4 will be reversed into 3. 2 will be reversed into 5. Let's move. 5 will be reversed into 2. So let's move to 13. 5, as mentioned, will be reversed into 2. So this is now the reversed items, which means, again, you can just compute now the mean. So let's compute for the mean. The mean is the average. So getting the, you have to get for the score, you will add the sum of, or rather you will add the ratings in item 1 to 14 divided by to the total number of item, and that is 14. Or in Microsoft Excel, it is equal sign average, close parenthesis, and select item 1 to 14 ratings for respondent number 1 and click enter. So the psychological well-being of this respondent is 3.64. And what is 3.64? 3.64 in our guide for interpretation is, let's open this. 3.64 is within 3.5 to 4.49, and it means that it is high. So the psychological well-being of respondent number 1 is high. Or if we use code, the level is 3. Because, of course, if we look at this, oh, sorry, it's 4. The level is 4. So this is how to interpret. So respondent number 1 has a psychological well-being of 3.64, which means that it is high. Okay, so this is how you're going to do it. Assuming that you were able to gather now the data, so this is the data set. So we have here the sex. So you also consider asking for other profile variables in your questionnaire. And these are the following. So we have sex, age, EA is educational attainment, item 1 until item 14. So these data are not yet reversed. This is the actual data encoded from the questionnaire you obtained. So as you can see here, just to review, of course, you were able to do this already. So for sex, the numbers here is 1 and 2 because as mentioned before, you have to use codes, or you have to transform your data into numerical by giving codes. Like for sex, it is 1 and 2. 1 corresponds to male, 2 corresponds to female. But you have to have a copy of the coding schemes, which will be given also to all of the members who will also encode their data. Because of course, if you have division of labor and some of you will encode the first 50 respondents, the other one will encode the next 50 respondents. So you have to come up with same coding scheme. Okay, here, of course, here it's also 1 to 3 because you made use of age bracket here. So item 1, item 2, item 3 until to the last item. Now, our second objective is how will we transfer this to Microsoft, or rather to PSPP or SPSS if you will use SPSS. So in the next video, we are going to process that. So thank you for watching. Please watch the second video for the continuation of our discussion.